John Bly with the.
Sorry about that, Chair.
I'm John Bly with the Engineering Contractors Association. Welcome to all of you to the CAC meeting, February 28th at 4 o'clock. And if we could, I'd like to just do an extended 30-second blurb for introductions. So I'll start. I've been with the Engineering Contractors Association, which is basically a trade group, advocacy group for the engineering general contractors in Sonoma County and the contiguous counties. And we've been in existence since 1976. Kind of a smaller group. We got about 150 members, but we try to stay very much plugged into the stream of sales tax measures and how they're being originated, how they're being spent, and that sort of thing. So with that, I'll pass it off. Drew, why don't you go ahead and take it next?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Drew Nichols, the clerk of the board here for SCTA and RCPA. And I put together all the agenda packets and make sure you have all the information that you need.
Thank you. And Ross, SCTA, thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet everybody that I haven't met before. I'm Ross Clendenin, Marketing and Communications for SCTA and RCPA. Also functioning as staff lead for the CAC. I started at SCTA at the very beginning of January, so I'm still getting up to speed, but enjoying it so far.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And Tom Banning.
Hi, I'm Tom Banning. I'm the 3rd District representative, and I've been on this committee for about 2 years now, I think, and have learned a bunch of different things. Thank you.
Welcome back. And Dennis Harder, who once again I acknowledge my predecessor as chair of this august committee, and your 20 plus 30 plus years of leading this advocacy group. So Dennis, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Not much more to say. I'm Dennis Harder, represent the Sonoma County Alliance. I have had the pleasure of working on this fine committee for over 28, 30 years. And we've had a lot of tax measures going through this, and a lot of changes to get multimodal transportation embedded and involved in Sonoma County. So that's me.
Thank you for staying involved, Dennis. Appreciate it. And Natalie, new to the group, but introduce yourself, please, and who you're with.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Natalie Higley. I'm a delegate on the North Bay Central Labor Council, where I represent the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 551. I'm glad to be here, and I look forward to working with you all.
Welcome. And Rick Lutman, League of Women Voters.
Yeah, thank you. I live in Rohnert Park. I'm a retired mathematics professor from Sonoma State, and I sit on this committee as an appointee of the Sonoma County chapter of the League of Women Voters.
Great. Thank you for coming tonight. David, SCTA, Riparta.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dave Ripperda, SCTA. I'm the Assistant Director of Projects and Programming, and been with SCTA about 4 months now, and happy to work with you all. Thank you.
Great. And Dana, SCTA.
Hi, I'm Dana Trey. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner with the SCTA. My focus here is on planning and programming for active and shared transportation modes.
Thank you. Welcome. Steve Bertelbaum.
Thank you, John. Steve Bertelbaum. I'm representing the Sierra Club, and I've been on the CAC since, I think, 2004 or 5.
Wow.
Oh, great. Thank you for all your contributions. David Oster.
Let's see if I'm unmuted. I'm the 1st District representative, and I've been on the CAC for 2 years, all COVID. So everything's been virtual. So I think this is a great idea to have people kind of introduce themselves. My background is I'm a retired attorney from public finance. So, and currently I'm on the Smart Citizens Oversight Committee also. So,
David, who are you appointed by? I'm sorry.
First District by Supervisor Gorin.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you, welcome. And Mosa
Yes.
Abasi. Mosa, you're unmuted, but we're having trouble hearing you, or at least I am.
Hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. Musa Abbasi, representing the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber. And I believe I'm on the committee since 2004, 2005 with Steve Berdelbaum. And I am a professional civil engineer and traffic engineer, and I enjoy working with you all.
Well, thank you for your guidance for all these years. I think we've done quite a nice job of it. Kurt Nichols, welcome, buddy.
Howdy. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold I'm trying to get over. Kurt Nichols, representing the Building Industry Association and have for a number of years. To be honest, I can't remember when. I didn't realize there was going to be a quiz today, or I would have looked it up.
Don't give us the wrong answer, Kurt. We're checking you.
I'm going to say early 2000s though, but I'm a landscape architect and have been with Carlisle Macy, civil engineers, landscape architects, and land surveyors here for close to 40 years. And so I am in the process of retiring.
Well, congratulations on that. And thanks for sharing your expertise and time with us all these years. Chris Barney, SCTA.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Barney, I'm a planner with SCTA. So I'm in charge of our travel model and data resources here at SCTA.
Thank you. And Brian Lang, another old friend. A lot of them on this screen. How you doing, Brian?
Good. Thanks, John. Brian Lang, I represent the 4th District. I've been on coming up on 2 years pretty soon. Yeah, since COVID started, I guess is about when I started. So I've never attended an in-person meeting, and hopefully that'll change soon. But anyway, I am been the executive director of the Sonoma County Alliance for the last 10 years, and I have about 2 weeks left, and I'm going to be turning the reins over to somebody else, but staying in the area. Prior to the Alliance, I had a 25-year career in transportation industry, particularly in heavy-duty trucks and trailers. We were a Peterbilt truck dealer, had 2 Peterbilt truck stores, but more importantly, we were a manufacturer of heavy-duty trailers, truck trailers, rock, sand, and gravel, the stuff that Mark Soyland and all the customers that pull into his quarry, that what they haul out of his quarry, they used our equipment. So anyway, been involved in a variety of transportation things throughout my career. So thank you.
Thank you. I hope you're going to stick around and grace us with your presence even after your career move here.
No plans to leave right now.
Thank you, Brian. Kathleen, Sonoma County.
Oh, hi, I'm Kathleen Cortez, and I'm relatively new. I am with Sonoma County Human Services, older adult area agency on aging. I'm a program planner and analyst. And my interest, of course, is in older adult transportation and transportation for people with disabilities. I don't know much about the committee or the purpose of the committee. I would love to get a background of the membership and how these organizations are selected. I'm also interested in equity. I would love to see some BIPOC, Latinx, people with disabilities represented in this group.
Awesome. Just a note, Drew or Shauna, perhaps at our next meeting, we could have like a 3 or 4 minute kind of background of the committee so that we don't bog up the time now, so that the newer members have a little flavor of the history and how people are selected and so forth for Kathleen. I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I'll notice the next
advice.
agenda.
Thank you. And Eris Weaver, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, I'm Eris Weaver. I'm the executive director of the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, saving the world one bike at a time, working to make our streets safer so people feel more comfortable getting out on foot or on their bike. I think I've been on the committee from around the time that I took on this role, so probably around 3 years.
Okay, welcome. And Mark Soyland, how you doing, buddy?
Good, thank you. Mark Soyland, Soyland Company. I've been on this committee for not quite 1 year. I'm serving in Supervisor Rabbit's district, I believe District 2. And I'm interested in transportation issues. I'm also a bit of a greenie in my space. I make landscape and construction materials, but I'm really into recycling, EVs, and renewable, sustainable energy. So I like these conversations.
Yeah, and I want to put a plug out for what you did during the fire rebuild too, buddy, for all your concrete recycling and all the help that you did with the fire debris cleanup and so forth. Hats off to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Tanya, anything you want to know about climate change? We got her right here, guys.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Narath, and I'm the Director of Climate Programs for the RCPA, and I've been with the organization since the fall of 2018.
Thank you. And Claudia?
Hi, everybody. Claudia Vecchio. I am President and CEO of Sonoma County Tourism, and certainly interested in transportation as it relates to mobilizing visitors and their interaction with residents and really how we best serve both our domestic and international visitors. I will sort of say we are also embarking on a destination master plan, and that plan is designed to create a long-term view of what Sonoma County is going to look like for visitors 20 years into the future. And transportation is very much part of that. So as we can really start down the road of having conversations and getting as many voices in this planning process as we possibly can, I will be reaching out to many of you to better understand how transportation works, how we can work better to plan for visitors, because visitation will most definitely grow. And I just want to be sure that we're thinking along the lines of how visitors use our roads and how our roads can be best served for visitors. So, and other transportation, methods and such. So look forward to some of those conversations. That Tanya, certainly around climate change, we're going to be very involved with that and look forward to working with you on those initiatives. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that master plan, because I could so rarely attend these meetings because I have another meeting at the same time, but today I could. So very glad to be with you all today.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we only have a couple left, but we're trying to keep it a little shorter than that so we don't tie up too much of it. No offense, Claudia, but thank you very much. Willard, a man outstanding in his field.
I was trying to figure out how long I've been a member of this advisory committee, and I came up with something in excess of 15 years, but I'd have to go back and look to make sure of that. I've continuously advocated for such things as improved bike lanes, response to climate change, etc.
Who are you representing?
Thank you, Willard. You played a good big part in getting Go Sonoma Act passed too. Appreciate your help there. Shauna Goss.
John, I have a question. Willard, who is he representing?
League of Women Voters.
So we have two representatives for the League of Voters?
Willard, who are you representing?
Representing the Sonoma County Transportation and Land Use Coalition. For many years, I represented the League of Women Voters of Sonoma County, but I switched over a few years ago.
Thank you.
Yep. And Shauna Goss.
I'm Shauna Gause with SCTA. I work with programming and projects. I primarily work with Measure M, but I also work in state and federal transportation funding and project management.
Great.
Thank you very much. And Tom Conlon.
Hi, everybody. Tom Conlon here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. I'm in Sonoma Valley, and I've been on this committee about 6 years. It only feels like 14 or 15, Willard. I am representing the Sonoma County Conservation Coalition, and in the past, I have a background in construction and energy consulting. Helped Autodesk develop some software that's used for green building analysis.
Thank you, Tom. Well, this is quite a diverse group we have here. And Suzanne Smith.
Hey, John. Suzanne Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Regional Climate Protection Authority and the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Cool. For joining us. And
For a
Janice
long time.
For a long time. And Janice Thompson. Welcome. Janice Spillman Thomas. Oh, there's Janice Thompson.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Janice Thompson. I'm with Sonoma County Transportation and Public Works. I'll be reporting to you today. Thanks.
You bet. And did I get Janet Spillman?
Hi there. I'm Janice Spillman, Planning Director, Sonoma County Transportation Authority. Did the Comprehensive Transportation Plan, and I'm just now wrapping up Vision Zero Action Plan.
You've been busy, Janet. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tracy Beers. Muted, Tracy? Hello? Okay, let's go to James Cameron.
James Cameron, I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Sonoma County Transportation Authority and Regional Climate Protection Authority. I'm responsible for projects, programming, accounting, finance, admin. I'm a civil engineer and a land surveyor, and I've been learning from Suzanne for the last 10 years, come this Saturday, how to be a better bureaucrat. So thank you. I enjoyed the enthusiasm that this group is having today, and it's great attendance.
Well, thank you, James. And because I didn't hear anything from Tracy, and so I'm new to this, can somebody if Tracy, if you're on there, could you introduce yourself? If not, if somebody knows Tracy, could they let us know who she's representing?
I've had contact with Tracy Beards in the past, and I believe she's with the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Council.
She is. She's a board member, advisory council member.
So do we have two members, Kathleen, yourself, and Tracy representing?
She's also interested public. It's a public meeting, right? So
yeah,
but there's
is she
one
representing
appointee.
You guys, or is she public? Is she just here for public?
I would say that she is interested in the committee. I don't know. She's not a full-time member.
Okay.
She's not appointed.
Well, welcome, Tracy, and thank you, Kathleen. At this point, if there is any public, thank you. I think that was useful to everybody. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, getting to hear a little bit about our backgrounds and so forth. At this point, we're ready for some public comment. So if the only person from the public is Tracy, do you have something to add for public comment or something that you'd like to share with us? You're muted. Hearing nothing, we'll go on to approval of the January 31st meeting minutes. So if you've had a chance to read them, I'll entertain a motion to accept them, a second, and then we can talk about any corrections. Dennis Harder.
I'll make a motion to accept them.
I will second.
Tom is seconding. Are there any corrections or discussion to the minutes from January 31st? And you guys got to bear with me. I got two screens here. So if there's somebody on the second screen, don't see any hands raised. So all those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, just signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition, say nay. Hearing none, the minutes are accepted.
I will abstain because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Eris. Any other abstentions?
Yeah, me too. I was not at the meeting, so I'll abstain.
Kurt wasn't, okay. All right, guys. We are ready for Measure M presentation. I think that's either Shauna or Janice Thompson, right?
Actually, myself, Mr. Chair, as the data representative from SCTA, I'll be introducing Janice Thompson from Sonoma County Transportation Public Works, as noted earlier. And Janice, I believe you should be able to share your screen with your presentation. Otherwise, I can share it for you.
Okay, thank you. I am clicking a few buttons and hoping to be ready shortly. And if it doesn't work out, you'll let me know. Still pressing buttons. Hang on. Let me just see if I can put that into the different view. And I just lost it. Hold on. Let me just see if I can get it into presentation view. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Janice, under slideshow, I think it's what, 5 to the right, 5 tabs. There, that's probably where the button is that you need to click on.
It is. It is. And when I'm sharing my screen, I don't have access. Let me see if I can move things. There I go.
Alt F5 usually will do it.
Wow.
Is that better? And then let me do that. How's that?
Perfect. There we are.
Is that good?
We're good to go. I think we're good to go.
You're good to go. Okay, great. So when I do that, I can no longer see you folks. So I'll probably just go through with it all and then take questions at the end. So let me introduce myself. I'm Janice Thompson. I'm the Deputy Director of Engineering and Maintenance at Sonoma County Transportation and Public Works. I have been there forever, which is about 30 years now. I've been in this role about 4 years now. So with that, we will begin. So today we're going to talk about 3 projects. Forestville Bypass, which is a local streets project, Airport Boulevard local streets project, and Arnold Drive, which is a bike ped. Are you guys seeing all the stuff that's on my screen, or are you just seeing the slideshow?
I'm seeing the presentation overview, and it says Forestville Bypass, Airport Boulevard, and Arnold Drive. Is that what I should be seeing?
Yep. Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Janice.
Yep. Okay, so first up is Forestville area improvements. So on the map, you'll see we've broken some Forestville projects down into 3 phases. I've talked to this committee before about phases 1 and 2, so I'll give a quick overview of those. And then phase 3 is new. So phase 1 was a roundabout at the intersection of Mirabel Road and Highway 116 in Forestville. We've done preliminary engineering work. We've gotten into the environmental stage, and there was a lawsuit settled out, but there's still no funding for construction of this project, so it is on hold. Phase 2 is the bypass of State Route 116 through town between Mirabel and Packing House Road, and that project also is lacking funding, and that one's on hold indefinitely. And so we've changed and shifted our focus in conjunction with Supervisor Hopkins of District 5 and developed several smaller projects that we are able to move forward on. So those are improvements at State Route 116 and Mirabel Road. We're looking at sidewalk and crosswalk enhancements for both bicyclists and pedestrians. It includes a Class 1 bike path from Route 116 up to Forestville Youth Park on Mirabel Road. That's in conjunction with the Parks Department. Class 2 bike lane northerly to Davis Road on the east side only. At a secondary location, State Route 116 and Covey Road, we are designing sidewalk and crosswalk enhancements, again, for both bicyclists and pedestrians. We are also looking at some downtown improvements between Mirabel Road and Covey Road, which include some parking and bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And then finally, there's the potential for a state routes to school project with enhancements at Covey Road and Davis Road. And then also included on the screen is the financial summary chart. You can see the existing information from phase 1, phase 2 with no funding, and then the current projects we're moving forward on total $4.5 million, with $2 million of Measure M and 2.5 from other sources. So the next project to talk about today is Airport Boulevard. Now, this is a large corridor enhancement project that we have been chipping away at for a long time now. As you can see, there's several phases. Phase 1 was to widen to 5 lanes between Aviation Boulevard and to the airport at the end of the road. We have, let me just explain my slide a little bit. So on the left-hand side are kind of project descriptions, different phases, and the phases in the blue colors have been completed. And there's a couple phases that we're working on or that are on hold. So I'll go through those kind of in order, but I did want to explain the slide. So phase 1 is the widening between Aviation and Highway 101, which included the signalization of Aviation. That's been completed. Phase 1B was further widening from Aviation Boulevard to Regional Parkway. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that one. We recently completed it. We're very excited to have delivered such a large portion of that project to provide some traffic congestion relief. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the future phase to be completed is between Regional Parkway and the airport. And we have applied for the 2021 SCTA funding program funding. And we're looking at all sorts of funding for that next phase. One of the phases, phase 2, that is on hold indefinitely is the extension of Brickway Boulevard. We were able to complete phase 3, which is on the east side of the freeway. That was between 101 and Old Redwood Highway. We've completed phase 4, which was broken down into 2 phases, phase 4 and phase 4A, phase 4 being the, which was undertaken by SCTA, which is the new interchange of Airport Boulevard at 101, and then TPW completed the landscaping of that overcrossing as phase 4A. And then phase 5 finally is the widening of Laughlin Road, and that project is on hold indefinitely due to lack of funding. So I had to put our financial summary on this next slide. I wasn't able to put it all on one slide for you today. So this slide is kind of a mixed view of both the funding of all of those phases I just spoke about, and then I snuck a picture of the before phase of Airport Boulevard. So as you can see here, this is the funding breakdown of the airport boulevard widening corridor projects. The highlights are where we're focusing our next project to be phase 1C, which would be the completion of the widening from Regional Parkway to the airport. We have partial Measure M funding, which we can match with some local funding, but we are looking for a large construction funding.
Are these
Will be
thousands of dollars?
Oh, yes, thank you very much for that. They are listed in thousands of dollars. Thank you. And then I've included a photo here of what Airport Boulevard looked like before the widening. And then here is some photos after the widening. So this widening was substantially completed at the end of last year. We do have one small section of sidewalk still to go. We're in right-of-way phase on that, and we're hoping to be able to deliver that shortly. But this does show the 5 traveled lanes, 2 6-foot bike lanes, curb, gutter, and sidewalk, street lighting, storm drain. Those are shown in the top 2 photos. The bottom photo left is of the full construction of a bus stop, which is located on the frontage of Smart's parking lot. And then bottom right shows the traffic signal at the crossing of Airport Boulevard, which was one of the most important elements of this project to deliver safe crossing for Smart's multi-use path and our biking and ped use at this facility. And then finally, just a little summary of our landscaping project of the interchange, which was construction was complete in 2017. There was a 3-year plant watering period, and the county will be wrapping up its maintenance and watering at the end of this year. And then finally, the project to talk about is Arnold Drive Bike Project. This is our bike ped project. It is mostly between Country Club and Loma Vista, although we'll make sure that we've completed the bike lanes from Petaluma Avenue to Madrone. We did complete a feasibility study a few years ago where we looked at right-of-way, tree utilities, drainage, and what we've put forth here, the financial summary is it's about a $4 million project, $2 million from Measure M, and other sources. We're still looking to complete the funding package on this, and we have applications in for that as well. These are some photos of what it looks like out there now. There's some design challenges, but we look forward to successfully completing those. We're hoping to get 30% plans later this spring. We're looking primarily at a class 2 bike lane. However, the feasibility study looked at both a class 1 and a class 2. And I know I'll be talking with this group, some who've requested us to take a look at a class 4 as well. So I'll leave that for discussion. And that was it. And now I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Janice. David, are you emceeing this, or is it back in my lap for the question phase?
I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I see several hands up. Let's start. I don't know, Rick, if you're still up from our vote, but your hand is up, so I'm going to you first.
Yeah, about a year ago, I remember we discussed this project, and my recollection is that this committee strongly urged you to do a class 4 because cyclists worry about safety. They worry about getting hit by cars, and a class 4 would we thought be much more popular with cyclists because they would feel safer.
Janice, any comment on the class 4 determination or direction for those?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, we haven't made any final decisions and we're hoping to evaluate a class 4. It comes with a separate set of challenges, of course. But we haven't made any final determination yet. We're only looking at 30% design later this spring.
This one's got a ways to go then. So the design, the 30% design wouldn't have to include class 4 if that was going to be considered, or would it?
I think what we can do is take a look at our options at that time.
Okay, thank you. Rick, does that satisfy your question?
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Steve Bertlebaugh.
Yes, I noticed that the governor's budget has some additional money for active transportation. And I'm wondering if there are some specific ways that we can help to make sure that that happens.
Well, I would love it if you could call the governor and let him know that we're looking for some money for this project. Like I said, we're working very closely with our partners at SCTA, and we're aware that we have a small funding gap, and we're always on the look. So we'll be looking both there. We're looking at local funding. We're exploring all of our options.
Steve, the challenge is there, buddy. Suzanne may be good at getting funding, but she's not connected like you are. So jump in there, buddy. Let's get this thing happening.
We'll do it.
Brian Ling, you're next.
Only been on the committee for a couple of years, so I have a question. How does those first two for Forestville and Airport, how does the project get on the list of phases, and how does that get determined? And then how does it get determined that something's on indefinite hold?
Well, I'll take a shot at it, but it's really my partners at SCTA may have to jump in too. So we apply for these projects during funding cycles with SCTA as far as getting projects listed. And then at a time when we first apply for projects, we don't know a whole lot about them. And as projects are designed and developed and environmental documents are prepared, obviously we're all learning at the same time what the site constraints are and how difficult things are to move forward. And sometimes we have to make those decisions. So for instance, the Forestville roundabout we were in the design phase, we were in the environmental phase. We had a lawsuit for the environmental document that went to court. That took several years. We were successful in that environmental challenge. However, at the end of the day, it still required, I want to say between 10 and $15 million of construction funds that we did not have. So we're not able to move forward for that reason.
Thank you.
Brian, does that satisfy you, or can I add a follow-up question?
There's probably some more clarity how the decisions are made through the process. So I get the inconsistent funding plays into this, but I don't know the process.
Mr. Chair, I can respond.
Yeah, and what I'd like to find out, David, is piggybacking onto Brian's, is in order to apply for this, Janice, correct me if I'm wrong, the county has to at least sit there and say, we have X to put forth to this project. So I guess when it goes on indefinite hold, what happens to those X dollars? So if you could weave that into your answer, David, I'd really appreciate it myself. Thank you.
Sure. And so I wanted to kind of tell the committee about Measure M. So Measure M is very specific on how we can spend funding. In the Local Streets Projects Program and the Bike and Pedestrian Projects Program, there's specific funding identified an expenditure plan that went to the voters back in 2004. And so in this case, there was 2 million identified for the Forestville area. And as Janice noted, the county moved forward and tried to deliver those projects, but they were not deliverable. There is language in the expenditure plan that if a project is not deliverable or has some kind of big hurdles that come up, they can be repurposed to another need. In this case, a need was identified by the county to do safe routes to school and other improvements in the Forestville area. And so those changes between the phases are identified as part of our Measure M strategic plan effort. And so we're currently updating the Measure M strategic plan, and we anticipate that coming to you this spring. And so those programming decisions on how the Measure M dollars get moved around come through this committee, come through the SCTA Technical Advisory Committee, and onto the board for them to make those recommendations. In this case, our recommendations for the new phase 3 of Forestville came to you last year. So now those recommendations will be enshrined in the updated 22 strategic plan this spring. So at this point, for Forestville, phase 3 is the only project we see moving forward in the near term, unless there's a significant amount of Caltrans funding that comes into play. But given the community opposition to the new bypass, perhaps only a roundabout is what might get constructed sometime in the future if funding becomes available. So I hope that helps, and happy to answer any other questions you have about Measure M.
It helps a lot because it helps define how fluid this whole situation is. You go through the application process, the county puts some dollars up, and then you get a little more information, and maybe you got to rethink things and so forth. So we're going to, as a CAC committee, we're going to see this reallocations survey or study in, did you say May or June, David?
So the strategic plan should be coming to you, I believe, in April, and they're planning to go to the board for final action in June is our current schedule.
Okay.
Great. Brian, is that answer the question that you originally had with Janice? Thank you, Janice and David. Appreciate that. Tom Conlon?
Thank you, Janice, for that great overview, and David for the detailed answer to Brian's good question. I feel like I understand that project a lot, but all of those projects a lot more, and I'm especially pleased to see how you were able to think on your feet up in Forestville and redirect that funding to some more fundable and constructible projects. I wanted to target my comments mostly on Arnold Drive. Janice, you recall that we did have some good discussion, and after our last meeting, I think I did do a deep dive into looking at the feasibility study and that path up there. And the issues that I recall were that the original feasibility plan set as a goal to really reduce the number of trees that would be removed. And that when the analysis came back, it found that the class 1 alternative was fairly circuitous to avoid the trees, which required a lot of pavement, which increased both the right-of-way acquisition cost as well as the absolute amount of pavement. So that was the higher cost of the project, just a longer road, a longer bike path. And so as you get into this design process, I'm really looking forward to being a little bit more flexible in that area around the trees. We may be able to have a class 1 that's separated, or a class 4 that's less expensive to construct through much of that distance, the full distance, but then right around the trees, do something that's lower cost and maybe doesn't take out quite as many trees. But personally, I'm seeing a lot of trees get taken down all over the county for vegetation management objectives. And sometimes it's hard to see the forest anymore. So I look forward to, I'm glad you have this opportunity with the new consultant and doing the design work. And I'm really looking forward to a really successful bike access project there, because Sonoma Developmental Center is going to be so much more accessible by bike if that project comes together. So thank you for all your work and attention on it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think you've just done my job for me. You've kind of described the challenges of and the choices between the bike paths, right? So the class 1 is something we tried to explore in the feasibility stage, just from a tree perspective, right? It can sometimes help you with trees. However, the downside is in the right of way. You are constructing more infrastructure, and therefore I would have to environmentally offset that. The class 2 is a widening of the shoulders essentially, and you take out essentially what is there, and you're going to have right of way issues with that as well. And then that only increases as we look at the class 4, right? So that again is more infrastructure, more environmental impact, more right of way, more pavement. And so it's just a challenge, and we want to look at it all and pick the best option. So we're moving forward with the design of a class 2, and we are not looking at a class 1, but we will have an opportunity to take another look at a class 4 when we have a little more information.
Okay, thank you. Again, just the mix and match creativity, I think, is really what's going to make this project successful. So the ball's in your court to do that for us, and we appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Janice, I think this is a question for you, a quick question. When quarries apply for their operating permit, for instance, and I'm back to the Forestville Bypass and roundabout and so forth, they are assessed an impact. I'm probably going to mislabel it, but I'll just call it an impact fee or set of fees. And it is not insignificant. It's millions, if I'm not mistaken. That money goes into the county to correct wrongs or fix roads that they're deteriorating because of their truck traffic, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess my question is, when you put something like the roundabout on indefinite hold, what happens to those millions that was originally assessed to a Canyon Rock, for instance? What happens to those dollars if they don't get spent for that roundabout because they were kind of earmarked for that? Where does that go? Is that just
repurposed?
Great question, and thank you. So that money is dedicated for a general use in that area. I wouldn't say it's necessarily tied to an exact project, but it is definitely tied to the geographical area and the roads that it is being assessed for. So we do have an opportunity on those phase 3 projects that I discussed today to use quarry funds. So those quarry funds will contribute towards the phase 3 Forestville projects.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And Tom, you got another question, or is that hand a leftover hand?
I did have a follow-up question. It occurred to me I hadn't asked about the nexus between the Vision Zero process and the Arnold Drive decision-making around class 2 versus class 4. Has there been any specific discussion of Arnold Drive as a corridor? I don't believe there's a lot of bike traffic on that corridor right now because it is so high speed and so unsafe. I guess I'm concerned that if it becomes more safe, we'll have a lot more bike traffic on it, and that could become a hotspot because of the high speeds. So is that something that the team is looking at right now? Or did Vision Zero look at that?
Well, I can say from I'll do a partial answer, and from our point of view, you know, we are partners in Vision Zero. We have developed, we've looked at the plan, and the concepts in there are concepts that we're applying to our design criteria. And then maybe Janet might have an additional answer.
Janet, you on there?
Am I on? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
So I'm not sure if it is on the high injury network, but this is all information for each jurisdiction to use as they will, and we're hoping that they take up the charge. Also, the county has a very thorough local road safety plan that will come into play with this as well. So our Vision Zero plan will be before the board to approve, but it is not an implementation plan.
All right, thank you. Melissa?
Thank you both.
Janice, do you have a photo or the design of the smart crossing? Because I noticed there is a pedestrian crossing there, and I'd like to know how it was constructed in.
So Musa, I was having trouble hearing you, but I think what you've asked me for is a look at the design of the pedestrian crosswalk on Airport Boulevard at Smart Rail.
Yes.
Yeah, just those photos that I showed earlier in the slideshow. I don't have an exact thing, but I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you and get you more information that you might want.
So do you have a signal there? Do you have a gate or something? Or
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, we do. We have a pedestrian activated signal.
that operates separate from the rail crossing, the gates?
I'm sorry, Musa, that it's what with the gates?
Do you have also gates there, for the crossing? When the train, passes?
They're not pedestrian gates, no.
But for the train, when the train passes, do you close the road? Or just a signal?
Yes, there's Smart has gates for their crossing.
Okay.
Did I
Musa?
answer your questions, Musa?
It is, to me, I drove there, it is confusing to me, because one time the pedestrian signal was activated, so there was no sign of a pedestrian crossing there. So I think adding a sign that there is a pedestrian crossing would be helpful.
And when you say sign, what do you mean?
Just a regular sign. There is, just to warn, drivers, there's a pedestrian, crossing there, not just a signal, I was not expecting someone to cross, the street there, to be honest with you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Looks like it's a good design comment, and appreciate that, Melissa. Eris Weaver?
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to what Tom Conlon was saying earlier about riding and the challenge of high traffic speeds with bikes on the road, and just want to remind folks that with the recent state legislation that passed, we are no longer beholden to that 85% rule. So we have a new tool in the toolbox for reducing speed limits as for controlling speed in appropriate locations.
Thank you. So in interest of time, I think we have badgered and questioned and commented on Janice to the extent that we're allowed today. Otherwise, we're going to run over. So
Oh,
Janice,
I didn't
thank
know
you.
there was a time limit. That's
Well,
fabulous.
there isn't. I'm just looking at the clock, and I don't want to give enough time for vision and so forth following. But has anybody got any follow-up last questions for Janice? She's so competent. We're pleased that you're here. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
So with that, thank you very much. And we will move on to our next segment, which is financial statements and 2022 bond disclosures. Is that you, James, or is that Sean?
It is. It
Okay.
is. Thank you, Chair. In your packet, you'll see are the standard financial reports that are our trial balances, both by fund type and by summary, as well as the fiscal year to date, as well as inception to date for Measure M in a tabular format, so you can see all the expenditures. The other report you'll see is the 2022 bond disclosures, which have a summary of the bond payments we're making. Within those disclosures for the 2015 bonds, I just wanted to remind the committee that the 2011 bonds were defeased last year. So on June 1st of 2021, they were completely paid off to recognize an interest savings using funding from Measure M that was available through a process of an inter-program loan. And the dollars that you'll see within the 2015 program are not refundable. They're not within the 10-year call period. So those interest payments will need to be recognized. Staff is not looking at any sort of early refunding of those. I'll also just point out overall sales tax revenues continue to be strong this year. And our latest strategic plan that we're working on updating that we'll be bringing a draft to you of in April shows that we're currently at about 96% of the projected for sales tax revenue from 2004. With that, I'd be happy to share screen, talk about numbers, answer any questions the committee would have.
I've got a quick one, James. I think it's a quick one, and that is change orders on a lot of this work and so forth do not seem to be a big issue. And I'm kind of wondering why that is. As a 30-year contractor, I mean, is this to the quality of the plans, the quality of the contractors, or your quality in managing all this? How is it we're getting away from these kind of runaway change orders and differing site condition issues that you see plaguing a lot of construction projects? It does not seem to be that we see a lot of overruns in these Measure M funded projects. How is that possible?
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a couple different answers to that, right? And it really depends on which of the programs we're referring to, right? So if we're looking at, say, our bicycle and pedestrian program and our local streets projects program that Janice was just reporting on, those overruns, if they occur, are typically borne by the implementing agency, right? So if say on that Forestville project, Measure M only has $2 million for that project. So if there's overruns, Transportation and Public Works is going to need to identify other local funds or another fund source to be able to fund those. And that's probably one of the major reasons. With regard to the Highway 101 program itself, I will say that, those are very large projects that do have substantial contingencies built into them because of the nature of doing highway work like that. And there is a very strict oversight that SCTA takes with managing those Caltrans projects. Any change order over $50,000 requires SCTA concurrence. And we essentially hold both the contractor and Caltrans accountable, as we need to for the, our responsibility with these dollars and these funding plans. So I would say that that's kind of the two different flavors of, in a lump or in a low bid environment where it's design, bid, build, change orders are inevitable. There is something that it's just a matter of whether they fit within the contingency, whether there's a separate fund source than Measure M to address them, or if we do actually have a program where Measure M is available to address them.
Thank you for that. Another quick question, and that goes to the Laughlin Road Bridge. And I think that was what one of the ones that Janice said is on indefinite hold at this point. How when that goes before you guys at SCTA to figure out reallocating and so forth, how does the need for that bridge come into play? We know there's dollars needed, but on the other hand, that's a bridge that we've all driven over or ridden our bikes over or walked over. And I don't know about the rest of you, but every time I go over it, I kind of wonder if I'm going to make it past the midway point. So how does the failure of that bridge, ultimate failure of that bridge, come into play for reallocation of funds? Can we just do the bridge and forget about the widening of the road, for instance?
So the bridge is actually, that's the Brickway extension, right?
Yeah.
So and that S curve through Laughlin is horrible, and trucks get hung up there all the time, right? Yeah. And from an SCTA standpoint, we have a 5-phase project that we've been working with the county for 20 years now to implement, and it's been on the books even before then, right? And when you look at what's there, that table showed you, what was it, $117 million worth of work that has to happen, of which you can't separate out the work to the south from the bridge itself. That's the Brickway extension. So that's a $30 million price tag to implement that. It's a great project. As far as Measure M and SCTA's programming that goes before this committee, that $15 million, has to be significantly matched to be able to deliver any of the projects. And essentially, TPW has come to us and said, we haven't spent a dime of Measure M money on any of those phases of Laughlin, the Brickway extension, or the extension to the south. So if we haven't spent the Measure M money on that phase, then they're not obligated to necessarily deliver that whole phase, right? They haven't wasted any Measure M money to, scoping it, looking at it, doing any sort of PSNE work. The phases that they have spent Measure M money on, they've either delivered or they plan to deliver. So that goes into, that's kind of a key component that came up earlier with regard to if a project's not moving forward. Keep in mind that if a project's not moving forward, it probably hasn't had any Measure M money spending on it, because once we start to expenditures of Measure M, there is an expectation for delivery.
And does the safety aspect, for instance, on Arnold Drive and so forth, does that come into play during your reallocation? So you guys look at the roundabout in Forestville and you say, oh, we haven't had any accidents there, but we have had 2 accidents on Arnold Drive. Therefore, Arnold Drive gets elevated for possible funding?
So when it comes to a program called HSIP, right, which is the Highway Safety Improvement Program through the state, that is very true, right? They're going to look at those safety indexes, how many fatalities there's been, how many injuries there's been on the network, and that is going to be what's required to be competitive for those fund sources. For Measure M, while safety is a requirement, or was one of the aspects that were looked at in selecting the projects, you really have to have a project on the list. So unless you were part of that action back in 2004, it is not something that is, say, what's going to compare one project to the other. You're either on the list and you have money dedicated, or you're not. To kind of wrap this up, though, looking forward, Go Sonoma does have a move traffic and improve safety category, of which is open call for projects, and we will be considering the full list of the 2021 funding program for that. And we'll also be working with this committee to develop a Go Sonoma strategic plan where policies like that can be implemented and will be implemented through the project selection process.
Thank you very much, James. Appreciate that explanation. James, are you done with your report? Thank you. Has anybody got any other questions for James? Okay, so thank you very much. And we are still probably with James or David on our Vision Zero. or Suzanne? Who's got Vision Zero?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Janet still.
That's me, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
This is just an update, and I kind of covered it earlier. We'll be bringing the final draft plan to the board for approval on March 15th. The first draft went to the board last month. We had comments until the 21st, I believe. And so now we're just wrapping it up and putting it together for this upcoming board meeting.
Great. Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any comments or questions on the Vision Zero? Pretty comprehensive plan. I don't know how much of us, how many of us have done the deep dive on it, Janet, but any comments or questions on that other than you? I know. All right.
Mr. Chair, I see Tom Conlon with his hands up.
Oh, yep. Sorry. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, John. Hi. So I just was hoping that maybe Janice could say a little bit about the comments in the chat about lower speed limits. I haven't read the plan in its current form, so I'm covering here. But I'm just wondering if the county is starting to think about doing something about lowering speed limits and setting some policy as opposed to sort of waiting for the rest of the state to have somebody else do it somewhere else. Just curious about discussions around that today.
Eris was correct earlier when she mentioned that state legislation has been passed to allow easier methods of lowering the speed limit. It's still complicated and difficult, and I don't know that it certainly can't happen overnight, but they're working on it.
Thank you, Janet. Steve? Bertlbaugh?
Yes, I may have made this comment before, but one of the issues that affects the Vision Zero project is that the data depends upon the quality of the reports that are made at the time that there's an accident. And police officers are really busy, and many of them hate to write reports. So I think that in order to make sure that we're getting good data, it's going to be important to have an auditing process for these reports. And I've suggested maybe we should take every 10th one and put a panel together and find out whether all the pieces that need to be put into the report are there. Because once the officers that are investigating accidents realize that they may get audited, I think the quality of the reports is going to improve considerably. So that's just an implementation issue that I think we all need to keep in the back of our minds.
Great point, Steve. Are you thinking that there'd be an ad hoc CAC committee that might randomly choose a report 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 to go over on a periodical basis?
Well, I wouldn't consider myself experienced enough to know whether a report is really good or really bad. I think that requires people within the law enforcement community. So my sense is that what we ought to do is we ought to just establish a way that every 10th report about an accident goes to a group of police officers that can be perhaps pulled out from various jurisdictions. And, maybe they can look at 5 or 6 at a time. This process is going to have to evolve. But I think we need to keep pushing to make sure that it happens. Or what we're going to end up with is lots of reports, some of which are excellent and some of which are done in a slapdash way. That's simply the way that things happen if nobody's looking over the shoulder of busy people.
Good comment. Janet, anything else to add? If not, I think, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to
I just
talk
said, no,
over you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nice report. Appreciate it. And we're on to our SCTA annual report. Is that Shauna?
That'd be me, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ross, you got it.
Yeah, I have a brief presentation, time permitting. We presented the SCTA RCPA annual report to the board on February 14th, and I will very briefly give an overview of that presentation. And hopefully that is showing up correctly.
And they're showing up correctly.
And this is, of course, available for download currently in the packet for this meeting. So in 2021, this report was presented to the SCTA RCPA board on February 14th. This report provides an overview. Sorry, let me get my screen in the right place. An overview of SCTA and RCPA activities and accomplishments over the past year. This report features brief descriptions of these activities and links to additional information if it is needed. Despite the continuing challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, SCTA and RCPA made progress and both met with success in 2021 on both the transportation and climate fronts. The comprehensive transportation plan was completed. Work continued on Highway 37 flood and congestion mitigation, and the Bay Run Water Upgrade Save program began service for customers in the city of Sebastopol. Measure M continued to provide funding as we prepare to transition to the Go Sonoma Act in 2025. Public input was received on the Vision Zero action plan, and the Sonoma climate mobilization strategy was adopted in the interest of improving Sonoma County's climate future. In September of 2021, the Sonoma County Comprehensive Transportation Plan was completed. This milestone is summarized in the annual report and will provide guidelines for equitable and sustainable transportation practices in the coming years. An overview of SCTA's 2021 transportation funding activities is presented in the report. The SCTA funding program was kicked off in 2021, starting the process of making funding selections in 2022. The Quick Strike funding program, a one-time MTC program, was fully implemented in 2021. We also helped facilitate funding for transit programs, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure through the TFCA and TDA 3. SCTA's programs and projects are featured, including a draft of the Vision Zero action plan, which we just discussed, and the Measure M annual report that was presented to the CAC at the last meeting, I believe. The Vision Zero dashboard compiles local crash data, and we know what that does, but providing an in-depth look at the causes of fatality and major injury crashes, I just changed that from accidents, and how to avoid them in the future. RCPA, in 2021, RCPA adopted the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy that sets a countywide goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2030. The strategy has been designed to address equity issues with many climate change hazards disproportionately affecting the county's more vulnerable and disadvantaged community members. Oops, backing up, sorry. Coordination continued with RCPA's partners with feedback on the strategy from the Climate Action Advisory Committee and local community members and organizations. RCPA also hosted a Civic Spark Fellow who's also working with the city of Sebastopol on a climate action framework. RCPA also completed grant work expanding education and availability for electric vehicles in Sonoma County. Steve, do you have a question? Oh, you have a question, Steve? Can I address something?
I will, yeah. I'm interested in the 2030 goal that we have to reach carbon neutrality, and what role the reduction in driving in VMT is going to play in that, and how we track our progress in terms of the reductions in vehicle miles traveled between now and 2030.
Well, that plays both into RCPA and SCTA. So those, in terms of tracking it, that certainly the VMT is on the SCTA side. In terms of actual greenhouse gas reduction, that would be more on the RCPA side. So I would probably direct you to Chris Barney on the SCTA side and Tanya on RCPA. But it's really kind of working in concert. Yeah. And basically, this is summarized in the report. Really quick, let me just finish this up, and just so I can take some more questions. And basically just close it out with the financial summary. So 2021 reports from SCTA and RCPA. So Steve, I don't mean to pass the buck on that. What was you're talking about the GHG side of the 2030 climate goal?
Well, the amount of driving that we do produces the greenhouse gas emissions, and switching to electric vehicles is going to maybe take care of 2/3 of the problem, but we've still got the other third that's going to have to be taken care of by actually reducing the number of miles that we drive. And how do we accomplish that? And is it going to be done by charging people to park? Is it going to be done by pushing for a road user fee? What do we do in order to get people to ride their bicycles instead of hopping in the car to make short trips?
Well, there's kind of several approaches there. I mean, number one, the switch from, kind of assuming that the switch from gas to electric is gonna, I mean, that's where a lot of the effort is going on the RCPA side right now. And then in terms of actual miles traveled, I mean, the reduction, I mean, you're talking about 5 different programs that we cover. If you want to, the GHG side, maybe Tanya has a comment. In terms of overall reduction, I mean, some of that is going to be road design, and some of that is just attitude. I mean, that's kind of what, the responsibility of the Vision Zero touches on as well. So I'm pinging to a number of different projects.
So Ross, if you'd like me to just jump in for a moment.
Just on the climate side.
Yeah, so I added in the chat. So we do provide the community-wide greenhouse gas inventory every 2 to 3 years. And so we're currently updating the inventory with 2020 data, and then plan to do that update every 2 years going forward. So that's really how we'll track how we're doing both with VMT, because vehicle miles traveled is a key input data element for the greenhouse gas inventory, as well as the emissions themselves. So I would say that's how we're going to be tracking over time between now and 2030, and then working with our partners in SCTA and all the jurisdictions to implement the plans that we've put into place, like the Vision Zero Action Plan, which is really aiming at making it safer for people to bike and walk and take transit. And then the SCTA is also planning to update its countywide bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and that should provide additional, with a real focus on designing lower stress routes for cyclists and pedestrians. And so then, of course, it's a matter of implementing those plans and securing the funding to do so.
Good explanation. Thank you, guys. Steve, thanks for your passion and your question on that. And appreciate the report, Ross, and Tanya, your comments as well. Thank you, guys.
Tom, do you have a question?
If we could, I just want to make sure we're allowing some time, Tom, to get to the rest of the program. So if you could keep it short, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I was just going to follow up on Steve's question and just emphasize that, you know, we have been setting aggressive goals in Sonoma County since 2008, since 2005, and BMT continues to rise. And, you know, this committee actually has some opportunity because of the diversity of our representation. Ms. Vecchio was with us, still with us, I see, and, you know, we'd wonderful to have more conversation around how we can increase tourism without increasing vehicle miles traveled. I'd love to have that conversation at this committee and start getting creative about how we might start to solve some of these problems. That's my comment.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you guys all for your comments and questions. And I believe we can talk about some legislation, which might have some answers in there as well. And is this Suzanne? Are you still there? Are you going to tell us all that is legislatively possible?
That's right. All of it's possible. So I should have pulled the agenda up. There are several bills that have been introduced that are, I think, of interest to this group, transportation related. So let me just walk through a couple of them with you. The first is SB 10. They're all by Senator Dodd. So he's doing a lot of work in the transportation and resilience area. And the first one I want to mention is SB 1050. This would enable tolling on Highway 37, which is a key component of funding improvements in that corridor. You may recall the senator did introduce a similar or a version of this bill 2 years ago, right before COVID hit. And then with COVID, he withdrew the bill, you know, wanting to see how things played out for the, you know, next few years. He agreed to reintroduce it this year, and we're pretty excited to have him working on this with our support and the support of MTC and others. So that's the first bill. And just, you know, broad strokes, to be clear, the idea is to provide improvements before you start tolling. So it's not tolling the existing infrastructure that's out there right now. The other just sort of broad construct is it would be governed along with by the same entity essentially that would govern all the toll bridges except for the Golden Gate Bridge. So it's the MTC Commission, but kind of under a different format called the Bay Area Infrastructure Financing Authority, but it's made up of all the MTC commissioners. So I would be happy to take questions on that if there are any, or I can jump to the next one, Mr. Chair.
I see Rick has a question. You're muted, Rick. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Usually holding the space bar does that. Somehow that's not working. I think we are aware that a lot of the traffic on Highway 37 during congestion periods is relatively low income people from the American Canyon and Vallejo area going to jobs in Marin. I'm sure they would love to live in Marin and not have to worry about the drive, but they can't afford to live in Marin. So I bring this up because it seems like charging to use the highway is going to adversely impact a lot of people who can't afford it, low income people.
So I can respond to that.
Okay.
A couple of things. One is the legislation calls for what's known as means-based tolling. So meaning income qualified individuals can get a discounted toll rate. In addition to that, the proposal is to have transit in the corridor. Right now, there is zero transit option out there for folks who have a commute shed, as you described, from Vallejo to Marin or Sonoma. And frankly, transit isn't going to work out there until we improve the corridor, because the bus will be sitting in the same traffic that an individual car is sitting in. So we do view this really as an equity project, that to make improvements in the 37 corridor, to offer transit and to provide means-based tolling, so that to your point, those who are, income qualified would not have to pay the same toll as those who can more readily afford it. Yeah. All right, cool, thank you. Any other questions on that one?
Excellent explanation. Thank you, Suzanne.
Sure thing.
I had a quick question, Suzanne. I was thinking about what happens will traffic patterns change if tolling is implemented on 37? Will people come a longer route, maybe even increase vehicle miles traveled to avoid paying the toll? Has that been studied? Is that something that they're going to be looking at?
Absolutely. So the term we use is diversion. And I will probably kick it over to James to speak a little bit more in detail about that, but it definitely is part of the environmental process. James, you want to add to that? You're on mute.
As part of the modeling that's required for the VMT analysis that's in the environmental document, of which that comment period actually closes today on, they use the 9 Bay Area county model to analyze that VMT, and it does include a diversion component that's come up with by applying tolling to the area. So it is being taken into account in the model.
All right.
Thank you.
So the next bill is SB 1049, again by Senator Dodd. And this bill addresses how the state, the bill proposes how the state should handle a percentage of the federal funds that are coming to California from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So as I think everyone knows, it was a pretty robust bill, but it was also differently structured in some respects from the FAST Act, which was the previous federal transportation bill. And part of what Senator Dodd is seeking to do is to sort of carve out a chunk of the increase that is coming to California to go towards climate resilience projects like Highway 37. So the proposal in the bill is that instead of all of the National Highway Protection Program, which is the most robust program in the bill, and the new Protect program, instead of that going to Caltrans and Caltrans deciding what to do with it, that 15% of the National Highway Protection Program, all of Protect, would instead be governed by the California Transportation Commission and would be focused more on climate resilience projects. And I think from the SCTA staff perspective, that sounds like a great idea because it would remove it into a different sort of context. Caltrans will still get a robust increase in the National Highway Protection Program to do the work that they need to do on the on the state highway system. But we agencies like SCTA or the region like MTC would have a better opportunity to pursue some of those funds for projects like 37 or other climate resilience projects. And the Bay Area would benefit from that. I mean, there are obviously coastal issues with sea level rise, but the Bay Area has a lot of infrastructure needs when it comes to climate change. And so I think the senators looking at the Bay region and saying, A, how can we, make sure we get some of that IIJ money here, but also how can we make sure that there's somebody aside from Caltrans allocating all of this new federal money. And we have historically worked really well with the CTC when they've done competitive programs. So I'm pretty excited about this opportunity. And so that's what that bill would do. Happy to, and there are a bunch of other federal programs. This is just narrowing in on those two that I mentioned.
I got a bunch of questions, Suzanne, but since we're out of time, I'll hold them and ask them at a different time. Thank you, though.
Okay. All right. And then the last bill, well, there's actually two things I wanted to mention before we go on to this next one, which is much more climate related. I wanted to mention that the governor's proposed, and this came out a month or so ago, the governor proposed a quote unquote gas tax holiday. And the idea here, as you may recall, under SB1 and in 2017, there's an automatic assessment of what should happen with gas tax rates based on inflation and various factors. And what the governor is proposing is to freeze that for the next fiscal year. The result would be about a little bit over a $500 million savings to consumers, or depending on how you look at it, a little over a $500 million hit to transportation funding. We have a sort of general policy at the SCTA that we don't support taking funds away from transportation. So we're going to be bringing this issue to the SCTA board in March to see if they want to take a position on the governor's proposal. I would also note there's been I think less broad, or well, there's been a similar sort of discussion at the federal level on suspending the gas tax, which we just passed this robust transportation bill, and it would totally eviscerate it if they suspend the gas tax. So wouldn't be great from a transportation perspective, though obviously I do understand the concern about rising fuel prices and inflationary impacts on people's household budgets. It's not an easy issue, but it's one we're tracking closely, and that would have an impact on our ability to do projects.
Tough position to take to, decide on the side that I kind of tend to side with you on this one, Suzanne, but publicly, that's a really tough position to take as people are getting knocked around by their checkbook. Steve had a question. I thought Tom had one too, but Steve, you got your hand up.
Well, the analyses that I've seen about the price of gas is that when you correct for inflation, the price is not out of line. But to the extent that a higher price causes people to drive less, the environmental community is going to be interested in making sure that people do drive less, and this is a way to make it happen.
All right. Were there any other questions on that? Okay, then the last bill. Oh, sorry. We good?
Yeah, good.
Okay. The last bill I wanted to mention is SB 852. Senator Dodd is working with the Local Government Commission on a concept that is pretty great, and that it really aligns with what we did 12 years ago. So yay us. So we created the Regional Climate Protection Authority 12 years ago. Senator Dodd's bill would enable the creation of, oh my gosh, now I'm going to blank on the name, resilient, Tanya, are you still on?
Climate resilience districts.
Climate resilience districts. We are particularly interested in this, not so much because we want to be one, because we already are one, essentially, but it does grant these districts additional powers that we do not have, as in the ability to go to the voters and ask if they want to fund projects. So we're working with his office on that bill to see if there's any opportunity to sort of recognize that we already exist and perhaps grant us similar authorities to what his district, what these new districts would have. Definitely more to come on that, but are pleased to see his interest in climate resilience. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Suzanne. And James, capital improvement projects.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. So since we're as we transition to Go Sonoma, we don't have a highway program. We're trying to make this a more robust capital improvements projects. Giving you the updates that are happening around the county, as well as giving opportunity to ask about the projects that are moving forward. I will just let you know that the Highway 101 work through Petaluma is proceeding nicely on schedule. We're on schedule to open those lanes by the end of this calendar year. Our State Route 37 Policy Committee is meeting Thursday of this week. On the agenda is discussions about the IIJA or the bill and the state budget, looking at opportunities to fund improvements along Highway 37, as well as the tolling legislation that Suzanne just spoke of. I'll also let you know that the latest round of the RAISE grant, formerly Build, formerly Tiger, is on the street. There's most likely going to be 2 applications from Sonoma County. One will be submitted by Caltrans on behalf of SMART to Windsor. The other will be submitted by the city of Santa Rosa for the Hearn Avenue interchange, seeking funding through the U.S. Secretary's Office RAISE grant. Lastly, I'll just say, with regard to capital improvements around the entire county, we will be having the Maintenance of Effort annual item coming to the Citizens Advisory Committee in March, so stay tuned for that. Thank you.
And just one quick comment, James, we did have a bid result 2 weeks ago on the last Novato Narrows stretch of the Highway 101 work. Apparent low bidder was Gelati Construction. Good bidding by Gelati Construction. Any problems with that bid that you've seen or heard of?
No, not yet. We're just, we're very fortunate to have 2 highly competitive contractors between Gelati Brothers and Gelati Construction, which got us bids significantly less than the engineer's estimate. And as far as I know, it's on schedule to be awarded. That would allow the entire 50+ miles from Richardson's Bay and Sausalito to Windsor to be open by 2024.
And that's some $11 million below the engineer's estimate, even these high time or higher cost times. So thank you. And I apologize for letting the meeting run a little long today, you guys. Everybody had some questions, and what are you going to do? So we appreciate it. Appreciate all the presenters, and you guys, thank you very much. And it's a wrap unless there's any announcements. Seeing none, we're out of here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.